All right, Jeff, so we were talking about a little bit of rain in the earlier week, but it's going to dry up though, right?
It is, yeah. By midweek, back to sunshine, some brighter skies, some warmer temperatures on the way. Little mist and drizzle around overnight tonight. Some of that may impact the commute come tomorrow morning, so be sure to check in with Grace first thing on your Monday, starting at 4:30 a.m. She'll let you know if there's any of that on the roadways. Otherwise, the rain chances, yes, going down the next couple days. By Wednesday, a sunny and warmer day back into the low and even mid-80s later into the week. Heading into the coming weekend, right now, doesn't look like it'll be super active. Saturday for sure is trending dry. Sunday, I've got a low-end shower chance, but right now confidence is fairly low that we're going to have to worry about that. Again, Grayson tomorrow morning, 4:30 a.m. with the latest on that work week forecast.
All right, sounds so good. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Trevor. WAAY 31 gives you 24/7 coverage. You can count on local news, breaking news, and severe weather. You can watch us on all of our streaming platforms. LawCall is next.
This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight we're taking your calls and questions about bad medicine. We love doctors and nurses and pharmacists and people who work in nursing homes. Thank you for taking care of our loved ones. Thank you for what you do, and the care that we receive most of the time is fantastic. And not everybody's going to get well, but sometimes errors are made, and that's what we're talking about tonight. When somebody gets hurt, when things go wrong, there's been a recent news story. We're going to talk about that. Call in your questions about medical mistakes, nursing home negligence, 256-536-0077. You can also now text us a question to that same number, and we will have some of your text questions. You can also email questions, and you send it to lawcall@waytv.com. And when we get to a show that's on point, we pull some of your email questions out. We've got some of your email questions tonight. Will League is here from Timberlake League and Brooks. Good to have you here.
All right, Sharon, talking about medical malpractice
Medical
tonight.
malpractice. Normally we play a video. We've got something a little bit different tonight because there was a news story that a lot of people in North Alabama have seen. A North Alabama man was down in Florida, got sick, had a surgery, and the story that's being told, there's I think a lawsuit going on because it appears that the wrong thing was taken out in the surgery.
You know, and that's what kind of sparked our show tonight. We got the panhandle, and let's just start by saying I echo your comments about 99% of the doctors out there, good men and women doing their best. There's 1% of clowns, and the 99% don't like that in their profession. And so when a malpractice case usually arises, you have to show a breach of the applicable standard of care. In the case down in Florida, a man from Alabama goes down there, goes in, his stomach's hurting, goes in, and they get him in the hospital for monitoring, and the doctor suggests a splenectomy to go ahead and take out his spleen. Unbeknownst to that man, that same doctor was censured the year before. The doctor was supposed to take out an adrenal gland and took out the pancreas. That's obviously a breach of the standard of care. Guy didn't know that. You're a patient, you go in the hospital for observation. The doctor said, hey, you need this surgery. Guy didn't want to have it, talked to his family, decided not to. Day 2, the doctor again pressures him to have the surgery. Day 3, doctor pressures him to have the surgery. You know what? Okay, you're the doctor, and you want to trust the physician.
You want to trust him.
Turns out, the doctor went in to do a splenectomy to take out the spleen. Unfortunately, took out the liver, and the patient died. To make it worse, the doctor then doctored the medical records to try and cover it up. The Florida Surgeon General has taken the doctor's license for now for further hearings to protect the Floridians and anybody else down there. And as consumers, when we go in, you want to trust the man or woman in the white coat. And usually give them the benefit of the doubt. They're the ones with the expertise. They're the ones we rely on. But how is the public or consumers to know that this doctor had these other issues? And sadly, it cost this Alabama man his life.
We've actually got that story for you. Let's take a look.
In a press conference on Thursday, family attorney Joe Zarzer went in depth describing how 70-year-old William Bryan from Muscle Shoals died.
The 18th of August, he went to the hospital complaining of left side pain. They diagnosed him with some type of spleen issue.
He says Sacred Heart Emerald Coast Hospital in Destin, Florida, recommended an emergency procedure take place.
So they scheduled him for surgery. After a couple of days, the family was wanting to take him back to Alabama to have any kind of procedure. And the surgeon and perhaps other people at the hospital were not quite sure about that, persuaded the family that he needed to do this.
However, during the surgery, Dr. Shimnosky mistakenly removed Brian's liver instead of his spleen. As you can see, medical documents provided by the family's lawyer seemingly back the claims. Medical malpractice lawyer Will League tells me this is something that hits close to home.
Unfortunately, I have experience with one of my loved ones being killed in a medical malpractice situation in Destin, Florida.
He says this is what they call a breach of the standard of care.
If you're a board-certified physician that has surgical privileges, the standard of care, at least in my humble opinion, would dictate that you don't take out the liver when you're trying to take out a spleen.
Adding that it's unacceptable and no one should be fearful when going to the hospital.
And if me or my family member or you or anybody in the community goes to the ER and has to have emergency surgery, you trust that hospital to hire a qualified, competent doctor to perform those surgeries, and it's unacceptable.
League says unfortunately these types of cases are lengthy and can take a while for families to receive justice.
Medical malpractice cases are time-consuming, expensive, and they're difficult to prosecute for, a myriad of reasons.
He says overall there must be more statewide precautions taken to prevent tragedies like this.
And without restraint or without oversight from the medical community, from the different states, it puts the public at risk. And this poor family paid the ultimate price, as did one of my family members.
Something like that happens. Are the laws in Florida very different? Medical malpractice cases tried the same laws apply?
So,
Florida, Alabama?
If you had a question about it, be brave. Give us a shout tonight, 536-0077. And yes, there are different laws. And it's, the consumer not knowing is one of the biggest issues. But in Florida, unlike Alabama, there's a 90-day rule where you provide notice to the defendant hospital or defendant doctor along with a written medical opinion of your expert outlining your case. The defendants can A, make you an offer, B, deny it, or C, offer to go to binding arbitration, which the patient or claimant is free to reject and then file a lawsuit at that time. You have to have a similarly situated physician, like you do in Alabama, to testify that there was a duty, a breach of the applicable standard of care for that type of procedure, and that there was proximate cause of the damage from that particular procedure. In this case, you're supposed to take out the spleen, take out the liver, and then the doctor covered up for medical records. And then you had this same doctor who did a similar situation a year before. And so my heart goes out to the doctor as well. Who wants to be known as the doctor who just totally blew it and someone's life's in your hand? No one. Nobody wants to be in that position. So I feel for the doctor as well, but the appropriate training and oversight must be met to protect the public. And it hits home because, again, like I said there, I had a family member that was killed in a malpractice situation in Florida. And I don't know, Sharon, if there's doctors that are going down that are retire, or you got you got more than their fair share of clowns that are applying to be doctors in Florida because that's where the beach is. But we're seeing more and more cases out of that area, and they need oversight to make sure you got somebody qualified. And in this case, the doctor was certainly not qualified. You had an issue this months before. It still let him. It could have been me, you, or loved one in there. And you trust the doctor, and then here you go.
And you're away from home, so you can't even ask friends or family, hey, do you know anything about this doctor? Hey, who would you go to for this kind
Right, and they tried. He wanted to come home. And it's a sad case for that
We
family.
got this email question from Diane. Diane says, how do you determine if an injury due to a surgery is because the doctor was neglectful or if it was just bad luck? I mean, because not everybody's going to get well. If you take out the wrong organ, that's clearly a problem.
Right.
But
Dan,
most things don't rise to that level.
Exactly. Dan, we rely on the experts. Somebody comes into my office and say, hey, here's what happened to my loved one. So usually we'll look at the medical records and then we'll consult with an expert to see if it's what's called a common complication, could be bad luck, or was there a breach of the standard of care. We tell clients that the doctor can't get an A, a B, or C, or even a D in a class. They have to get an F to fall below the applicable standard of care, that there would have been otherwise a positive outcome, but for that doctor's decision, care, things like that. Medical malpractice is not a slip of the knife or a human mistake, but it is, in this particular case, taking out the wrong organ, showing up and doing a surgery while you're intoxicated. I mean, we've seen, a GP in North Alabama without surgical privileges, do a breast augmentation and a tummy tuck in his office with nothing but a pulse oximeter. Butchered this poor lady.
Oh my goodness.
So you've got, again, 99% of the doctors straight up doing well, but there's 1% of clowns out there that are causing the doctors have a bad name in some of these areas. And and the doctors don't really like seeing, conduct like this. And again, most of them are great and doing the best they can. Some are not. If you're a general practitioner, you've never performed breast augmentation, and you're going to order stuff on the internet and then do it,
Crazy.
It's insanity.
Crazy.
Yeah.
There's a question, somebody has texted in asking the question of whether the doctor is still licensed to practice in Alabama. Do you recognize the doctor name on the story? Because I don't recall the doctor name on the story.
Yeah, I do. Okay, so
they're suggesting he's still licensed to practice in other places.
He may be. So, again, it's state by state.
Okay.
It's not a national database.
Okay.
So the Surgeon General of Florida conducted an investigation, and they provisionally suspended this doctor's license. Now, they could have considered less intrusive means by restricting splenectomies, restricting adrenal gland surgeries, but given the totality of circumstances, the Florida Surgeon General decided that it's prudent to protect the Floridians to suspend this doctor's license until further hearings can be had. So it's not over for this doctor.
Okay.
Maybe he or she could go back and get more training. But back to this particular question, the doctor could be licensed in Alabama, and maybe that was not good. So greater oversight on a doctor's qualifications, education, and training is needed if you can just jump right over the state line and then start performing surgeries on unsuspecting patients, and that's an issue.
Okay, we got a text question. Viewer says, I'd like to know of a law firm or an attorney that will take a wrongful death case. I've called 10 firms in the area. They're more interested in auto cases and those kind of things. So not
Right.
every lawyer is going to take a medical malpractice or something like this.
We're one of the only firms in North Alabama that still handle medical malpractice cases. And the reason is they're difficult to prosecute, they're expensive. If you lose that case, you're really talking about a big financial burden for not only the law firm and sometimes the plaintiff's families.
How much does it take? Does it cost?
You can
to
try
pursue
these
something
things
like that?
anywhere from $15,000 to $100,000.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
you have to hire the experts. They come in, you pay for their time, you pay for their travel. If you lose, you're still responsible for their fees.
The lawyers take that on.
We take
for
that
personal injury cases.
responsibilities, and you can have your brains beaten. Most jurors want to believe the doctor. They
Really?
want to believe the man or woman in the white coat that are trying to do the best, and oftentimes they are. And so the jury charges in a medical malpractice case in Alabama read like a criminal prosecution. Nobody's going to jail. We're saying you made a mistake. We're not saying you meant to, but you made a mistake and cost our patient, our client, his life or some other damage. And so it's difficult to hold a doctor accountable in Alabama the way the law reads. It tilts in favor of the doctors. And some of that is by design, and some of that because we don't want our doctors to practice medicine with a gun to their head,
Right.
Sharon.
Right.
So there needs to be some balance. But it's difficult as they are. This particular one who texted in, if not a case that we turn down probably 90% of the medical malpractice cases we review, and that's because a lot of families, let's be honest, come in and they're grieving the death of a loved one. And so a lot of my job is to talk them through that,
Wow, yeah.
to look at the medical records and to try and explain to them that this is either a common complication or something the doctor couldn't have helped, or even if it's poor care, it doesn't fall below the measure of a breach of the standard of care. And so those are the difficulties that firms and prosecuting attorneys like myself have to deal with when we take on a case. Is not only do we have the expert opinion to prove that case, but the financial wherewithal to see that case through. And that's why a lot of firms don't take those. And they're difficult. They're difficult cases to try and difficult cases to win.
We're going to take a break. We'll get right back. We've got some email questions and some text to cover. Call in the 31 Law Call number 536-0077. Be right back.
watching WAAY 31 Law Call. Your rights, your calls, live. Presented by the Tennessee Valley's award-winning personal injury and wrongful death law firm, Timberlake, League & Brooks. Featuring the knowledge and experience of Attorney Michael Timberlake, Attorney Will League, Attorney Heath Brooks, Attorney William Maservi, and hosted by broadcaster and family law attorney Sharon Doviet. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back to 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Will League is here from Timberlake, League & Brooks. They are personal injury attorneys, and we are talking about bad medicine. We were talking about a North Alabama man that was down in Florida, had a surgery. They took out the wrong organ, and he passed away. And the medical malpractice cases, people are texting in. We've gotten a lot of calls and questions. Question about, is there a way that you can look up the record for somebody, for a surgeon?
You know, interesting question, and one that really gets us plaintiff lawyers heated up about this. You can go to your state board of medical examiners to find out the licensure, to find out the qualifications of that particular doctor, but oftentimes you cannot go in to find doctors' previous mistakes. And what the big hospitals and the doctors, and again, I don't want doctors to practice medicine with a gun to their head, but quality assurance, QA. And basically the theory behind quality assurance is, let's say a doctor messes up, or let's say a hospital makes a mistake, they can go in, investigate, address it, and then try and address that problem without having to make that public. And so me, as let's say I'm representing you, and this doctor is the fourth mistake that he or she has made. I can't get in. Not only can I not get into it because it's deemed quality assurance, I cannot bring that evidence in our particular case. So the jury, if the doctor has messed up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then my client comes in on Friday, exact same mistake, without a pattern and practice situation, I can't bring those prior mistakes into evidence. Okay. And so unfortunately, again, the consumer is at a disadvantage trying to find out, is this particular doctor qualified to treat me for this particular injury, illness, or surgery? And that quality assurance, while it's designed to help hospitals and physicians groups identify, investigate, and address the problem, it's not public information. Sunshine laws are disappearing rapidly, and so you cannot get that information, and the public's harmed by that. So it's difficult based on that question. We're getting a lot of text questions, and a lot of it surrounding that.
Yeah.
You know, and so it gives us a lot of heartburn because we feel like that it's used disingenuous to keep this from the public. And again, I hate to be this guy, hey, the sky's falling, but let me tell you something. Your loved one, something happens to them, and you call a firm like me or a firm like ours, and they say, we can't get into that stuff. It's frustrating, and people don't realize that until their ox is in a ditch.
Yeah.
You know.
We've got Renee on the line with a question from Harvest or comment. Hi, Renee. Thanks for calling. What's your question or comment tonight?
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure. Thanks.
Quick question regarding nursing home care. You know, you hear a lot about the standard of care or lack thereof in nursing homes and things like that. And I know a gentleman several years ago whose wife was in a nursing home, and, you know, she was pretty much on her deathbed, I guess, and so she couldn't really speak for herself or anything. And he showed me that he had, he would pull a video on his phone. He had placed a camera in there to just kind of keep an eye on what was going on while he was at work. So my question is, if he did see some things that basically showed evidence of negligence or maybe mistreatment or abuse or anything like that, would that video be considered legally permissible if he filed a suit against that facility?
You seen those kind of videos
Renee,
come in?
Renee, how long ago was it? Do you know?
Oh gosh, this was at 5, 6, 7 years ago. I mean, it was several years ago when this particular gentleman had that situation. But I think about it, you know, even today, is something like that. Right. You know, a lot of us have loved ones that may end up having to go into a facility.
Could you use it? Could you get that in?
We can. We've had that case before, whether it be abuse, you know, theft, things like that. Okay. And Renee, let me just say this: most of the folks in these nursing homes are sweet, are doing well, are doing the best they possibly can do to take care of your loved ones. It's a thankless job. It's a difficult job. You know, there's some sayings out there, you know, you can judge a society by how they treat their elderly and their young folks.
Yeah.
And what we typically run into, Sharon, is, and we talked about it before, is a staffing situation. And, you know, your most expensive, line item is human beings, nurses, you know, techs, all those things. So what we see is, let's say you got a floor with 40 patients. Well, 20 years ago, maybe let's say there's 12 nurses.
Yeah.
You know, now you're seeing 3 nurses with 5 techs. And so when you got that many patients and with fewer staff, it's almost impossible to appropriately treat those staff with that few people.
Yeah.
Then the people get run down.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, the family comes in, they're frustrated, they're paying this money, Medicare or Medicaid's paying this money. You have people, you know, who live their lives, and it's time for them to die with dignity and peace. And they're laying in their own feces and things like that, and it frustrates the family, and it's just a vicious cycle because there's not enough human beings. And we've had cases, to answer your question, Renee, where there has been video in the rooms, and we can, you know, submit that as evidence in our claim, you know, if it's reliable, if we can prove the content, and it's reasonably related to prove the fact that we intend to prove in court. Usually the judge will let those videos in.
Does the nursing home have to know that you're putting a camera in there?
I think they do. Now there's policies and procedures that you sign.
Yeah,
sometimes
I'm afraid
you may
there's going to
wanna,
be something on a
you
contract.
may want to look at those
Okay.
to see first and foremost. But if you're paying for that room,
You ought to be
that's
able
their
to.
private area. So, you know, what's the harm in being able to watch your loved one?
Yeah.
And we've used those videos before as evidence in our case in chief. And you know, and we advise clients to go and, you know, be friendly with the staff, you know, be present, be available. And again, if you can, you know, do your best to convey that that's our loved one, that, you know, and you're involved. And is it a requirement? No, it's not. But again, to get the best care you possibly can get, do everything you can to cooperate with the staff, and, you know, try and lean on the higher ups to have more staff for that particular floor, because the problem is staffing. You got the companies don't want to pay for the people, and the quality suffers, and our loved ones suffer.
Okay, we've got this from Frank. Frank had emailed, my wife had knee replacement surgery. After 2 months, she was still having stiffness and pain. I suggested something was wrong with the implant, but the doctor dismissed it. Finally, after several more weeks, they discovered that the attachment to the bone had failed and there's an infection. Another surgery is scheduled. Should we call a lawyer? What do you think with that?
Wouldn't hurt to review the records. You know, when you're talking about infections, oftentimes it's hard to prove where an infection came from, even with the best care possible. Sometimes you've got a mechanical device that fails. Is that malpractice? Sometimes not. Sometimes it is. Let's say, you know, you needed a 12 gauge implant and you put in a 3 gauge. Well, maybe that is. But if you put the appropriate hardware in there and it fails, don't believe that's a medical malpractice situation for the doctor, but it may be a products liability situation for the company that manufactured, designed, and placed that defective piece of implementation into the stream of commerce. So it could be a products liability claim. Sure could.
Maybe talk to a lawyer directly with those records. Get those records. We're going to take a break. Be right back in just a minute talking about bad medicine. If you didn't get your questions answered tonight, here's how to get in touch with Will League with Timberlake League and Brooks. They are personal injury attorneys, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com. And if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And family law attorney Sharon Doviet, 539-7337, SharonFamilyLaw.com.
Somebody had texted in asking, shouldn't the surgeon have to provide his success rate to the patient or the patient's family?
Could it violate HIPAA? You know, you got different facts coming into each case. Each case is different, so it would be a little bit misleading.
Yeah,
you know, if you were to do that.
I can see that.
But I did want to shout out to our very own producer, Dave Keller. We're so happy he is with us here tonight. He could be there. South Star was canceled because the rain looks like a mess.
Oh,
I know
boy.
Dave hated he wasn't there, but we sure do appreciate having Dave Keller up here, a longtime producer and Huntsville High graduate and music enthusiast.
Thanks for all your calls and questions tonight. Have a safe week.